Welcome to Quiz Time. I'm your Quizmaster, Sean, and I've got questions for you. 100 questions about music from the 1960s. So let's see what we know, have a little fun, shall we, and stretch our brains a bit. Let's begin. Which band released the album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967? Was it The Who? Was it the Rolling Stones? Or was it the Beatles? Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was the Beatles, of course. What was the name of the festival held in 1969 that became an iconic moment in music history? Was it Monterey Pop, Woodstock, or the Isle of Wight? And that would be Woodstock. Who was the lead singer of The Doors in the 1960s? Was it Jim Morrison, Roger Daltrey, or was it Mick Jagger? And the lead singer for The Doors in the 1960s, that was Jim Morrison. Which 1960s song begins with the lyrics, "There must be some kind of way out of here"? All Along the Watchtower, House of the Rising Sun, or Paint It Black? And that would be All Along the Watchtower. Which band is famous for the song Good Vibrations, released in 1966? Was that the Monkees, the Beach Boys, or was it the Byrds? And that iconic song was released by the Beach Boys in 1966. What was Aretha Franklin's hit song in 1967 that became an anthem for the civil rights movement? Chain of Fools, Natural Woman, or R-E-S-P-E-C-T? And that was Respect. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Which guitarist set his guitar on fire during the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967? Was it Keith Richards, Jimi Hendrix, or was it Eric Clapton? That was Jimi Hendrix. What was Bob Dylan's breakthrough protest song in the early 1960s? Was it Blowin' in the Wind? Was it The Times They Are A-Changin'? Or was it Like a Rolling Stone? It was The Times They Are A-Changin'. Which British rock band released the song Paint It Black in 1966? Was it the Rolling Stones? Was it the Animals? Or was it the Kinks? Paint It Black was released by the Rolling Stones. What is the name of the Motown girl group that had hits like Stop, In the Name of Love? And that Motown girl group was the Supremes. Who was the original singer of Stand By Me, released in 1961? The original singer of Stand By Me was Ben E. King. What famous folk group sang Leavin' on a Jet Plane in the 1960s? Was it the Kingston Trio? Was it Simon and Garfunkel? Or was it Peter, Paul, and Mary? It was Peter, Paul, and Mary. Which artist performed My Girl, a Motown classic from 1965? Was it the Temptations? Was it the Four Tops? Or was it Smokey Robinson? And that was the Temptations. What year was the Beatles' debut album, Please Please Me, released? Was it 1965? Was it 1960? Or was it 1963? Please Please Me was released in 1963. Who wrote the hit song, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, later made famous by Marvin Gaye? Smokey Robinson, Barrett Strong, and Norman Whitfield, or was it Stevie Wonder? Heard It Through the Grapevine was written by Barrett Strong and Norman Whitfield. Which rock group's 1967 album was titled, Are You Experienced? The Jimi Hendrix Experience, Cream, or The Grateful Dead? And that group was the Jimi Hendrix Experience. What famous Simon and Garfunkel song appeared in The Graduate? Mrs. Robinson, Bridge Over Troubled Water, or The Sound of Silence? And that would be Mrs. Robinson. Which member of the Beatles crossed Abbey Road barefoot in the iconic album cover? Was it John Lennon, George Harrison, or was it Paul McCartney? Which one of them was barefoot? That would be Paul McCartney. What was the name of Janis Joplin's band before she went solo? Before going on her own, she was in the band Big Brother and the Holding Company. Which 1960s band had a hit with The House of the Rising Sun? Was that the Zombies, the Animals, or was it the Hollies? House of the Rising Sun was by the Animals. Who was the original performer of Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, released posthumously in 1968? Was that Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, or was that Wilson Pickett? Sitting on the Dock of the Bay was by Otis Redding. What year did the Rolling Stones release I Can't Get No Satisfaction? And that year was 1965. Who sang the hit It's My Party in 1963? Was that Leslie Gore, Connie Francis, or was that sung by Dusty Springfield? And that's by Leslie Gore. What 1960s rock group performed For What It's Worth? Creedence Clearwater Revival, Buffalo Springfield, or was it Crosby, Stills, and Nash? And that was Buffalo Springfield. Which song was a hit for the Mamas and the Papas in 1966? Go Where You Wanna Go, Monday Monday, or California Dreamin'? The hit for the Mamas and the Papas in 66 was California Dreamin'. Who was a frontman of The Who during the 1960s? The frontman for The Who. That would be Roger Daltrey. What Elvis Presley song became a hit after his 1968 comeback special? Hound Dog, Can't Help Falling in Love, or was it If I Can Dream? It was If I Can Dream. What genre is closely associated with the Byrds during the 1960s? Folk rock, psychedelic rock, or hard rock? And the genre closely associated with the Byrds is folk rock. Who performed the iconic hit Son of a Preacher Man in 1968? Was that Aretha Franklin, Etta James, or Dusty Springfield? Son of a Preacher Man. That was performed by Dusty Springfield. Which 1960s band performed the psychedelic anthem White Rabbit? Psychedelic anthem White Rabbit was performed by the band Jefferson Airplane. What band is known for the hit Gimme Some Lovin' in 1966? Was it the Yardbirds, the Spencer Davis Group, or was it Cream? Gimme Some Lovin' by the Spencer Davis Group. Which soul singer is famous for the 1967 hit Sweet Soul Music? Otis Redding, Arthur Conley, or Wilson Pickett? Sweet Soul Music, that was by Arthur Conley. What folk artist wrote the protest song Eve of Destruction in 1965? Was that Donovan, Bob Dylan, or Barry McGuire? And that is a song by Barry McGuire. Who performed the iconic Bond theme song Goldfinger in 1964? Was it Nancy Sinatra? Was it Shirley Bassey? Or was it Barbra Streisand? Goldfinger was performed by Shirley Bassey. Which Rolling Stones song begins with the lyrics, I see a red door and I want it painted black? Ruby Tuesday, Paint It Black, or As Tears Go By? And that would be Paint It Black. Which Motown group performed Dancin' in the Street in 1964? Martha and the Vandellas, The Temptations, or The Supremes? Dancin' in the Streets was performed by Martha and the Vandellas. Who released the hit Unchained Melody in 1965? The Righteous Brothers, the Everly Brothers, or was it Simon and Garfunkel? Unchained Melody was by the Righteous Brothers. Which female artist sang Downtown in 1964? Was that Lulu? Was it Dusty Springfield? Or was it Petula Clark? That was Petula Clark. What was the name of the Beatles animated film released in 1968? Was it Help? Was it A Hard Day's Night? Or was it Yellow Submarine? The animated film was Yellow Submarine. Who sang the hit piece of My Heart in 1968? Janis Joplin, Grace Slick, or Joan Baez? Piece of My Heart in 1968? That was sung by Janis Joplin. Which group released You Really Got Me in 1964? Was that the Kinks? Was it the Animals? Or was it the Byrds? And that would be the Kinks. What was the first single by the Rolling Stones to top the UK charts? The first single to top the UK charts. And that single was It's All Over Now. Who wrote the 1960s anthem Turn, Turn, Turn? Was that Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, or was that Johnny Mitchell? Turn, Turn, Turn was by Pete Seeger. Which singer is known as the Queen of Soul and rose to fame in the 1960s? The Queen of Soul. That would be Aretha Franklin. Which Beach Boys album is considered one of the most influential of all time? Surfin' Safari, Pet Sounds, or Smiley Smile? The most influential Beach Boys album of all time, Pet Sounds. Which folk rock duo released the song The Boxer in the 1960s? The Boxer was released by Simon and Garfunkel. What band released the 1967 album Disraeli Gears? Led Zeppelin, the Yardbirds, or Cream? And Disraeli Gears is Cream. Who performed the song Twist and Shout, popularized in 1963? Was that the Isley Brothers, the Beatles, or was it the Beach Boys? Twist and Shout. That was by the Beatles. What girl group performed Be My Baby in 1963? The Crystals? The Supremes? Or was it the Ronettes? Be My Baby. That was performed by the Ronettes. Who released the album Highway 61 Revisited in 1965? Highway 61 Revisited was released by Bob Dylan. What group had a hit with The Sound of Silence in 1964? Crosby, Stills and Nash, Simon and Garfunkel, or was it the Byrds? Simon and Garfunkel. They performed Sound of Silence. Which 1960s band was known for their long improvisational live performances? Jefferson Airplane, Big Brother and the Holding Company, or was it the Grateful Dead, known for their long improvisational live performances? That was the Grateful Dead. What famous album did the Beatles release on their own Apple label in 1968? The White Album, Let It Be, or was it Revolver? And they released the White Album. Who sang the song Moon River in 1961? Moon River. That one was sung by Andy Williams. Which 1960s band was led by John Fogerty? Creedence Clearwater Revival, Buffalo Springfield, or was it the Byrds? John Fogerty. That would be CCR. Which 1960s artist had a hit with The Wanderer? Was that Del Shannon? Was it Dion? Or was it Bobby Darin? The Wanderer was a hit for Dion. What group recorded the song Happy Together in 1967? Was it the Monkees? Was it the Mamas and the Papas? Or was it the Turtles? Happy Together was originally sung by the Turtles. Which song is known as the anthem of the Woodstock Festival in 1969? Sweet, Judy Blue Eyes, Going Up the Country, or was it Somebody to Love? The anthem of the Woodstock Festival was Going Up the Country. What Johnny Mitchell song became a hit for Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young in 1970, written during the late 1960s? And And that song was Woodstock. Which Brazilian artist popularized The Girl from Ipanema in the 1960s? João Gilberto, Antonio Carlos Jobim, or Astrud Gilberto? Easy for me to say, right? Astrud Gilberto popularized The Girl from Ipanema. What is the name of the Japanese folk group that released Kanda River in 1968? Was that the Folk Crusaders? Was it the Spiders? Or was it Happy End? And that would be the Folk Crusaders. Which South African singer became internationally known for her anti-apartheid songs in the 1960s? Miriam Makeba, Ladysmith Black Mambazo, or was it Hugh Masekela? It was Miriam Makeba. Which Indian sitar virtuoso collaborated with the Beatles in the late 1960s? Was it Ali Akbar Khan, Ravi Shankar, or Zakir Hussain? And it was Ravi Shankar. Which French singer gained fame with the song Je t'aime, moi non plus in the late 1960s? Edith Piaf, Muriel Mathieu, or Jane Birkin? And that would be Jane Birkin. What Italian artist won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1964 with the song No ho l'età? And that Italian artist was Giulio Cinquetti. Which German singer released the hit Lily Marlene during a 1960s revival of the song? Marlene Dietrich, Hildegard Neff, or Udo Jürgens, or Jürgens, I believe. And that would be Marlene Dietrich. Which Cuban musician helped popularize the cha-cha-cha style internationally in the 1960s? Was it Perez Prado, Tito Puente, or Enrique Jorrin? And that would be Enrique Jorrin. What was the name of the Jamaican musician who became a ska and rocksteady pioneer in the 1960s? Was it Jimmy Cliff, Toots Hibbert, or Desmond Dekker? And that was Desmond Dekker. Which Canadian folk singer released the song Both Sides Now in 1969? And that would be Johnny Mitchell. Which Chilean artist is considered a pioneer of Nueva Canción, new song, in the 1960s? Victor Jara, Violeta Parra, or Mercedes Sosa? And that would be Violeta Parra. Which Nigerian musician fused traditional African rhythms with jazz in the 1960s? Hugh Masekela, King Sunny Ade, or Fela Kuti? That Nigerian musician was Fela Kuti. Which genre of music was developed in Argentina during the 1960s, blending rock with tango influences? Rock mixed with tango equals rock nacional. What Scandinavian group gained fame in the 1960s with their single Cadillac? Was that ABBA, the Hep Stars, or was it the Shanes? That was the Hep Stars. Which Israeli artist won global acclaim with her 1960s song Jerusalem of Gold? Ofra Haza, Naomi Shemer, or Shoshana Damari. And that artist would be Naomi Shemer. What Mexican-American singer released La Bamba in the early 1960s? And La Bamba was released by Trini Lopez. What Soviet composer's work dominated classical music in the USSR during the 1960s? Was it Dmitri Shostakovich? Was it Sergei Prokofiev? Or was it Aram Khachaturian? It was Dmitri Shostakovich. What Brazilian music style emerged in the 1960s and is associated with artists like Caetano Veloso? Would that be samba, bossa nova, or tropicalia? And that would be tropicalia. Which Turkish artist rose to fame with the psychedelic folk style of Anatolian rock in the 1960s? That Turkish artist would be Barış Manço. What iconic protest song was written by Australian folk singer Eric Bogle during the 1960s? And the band played Waltzing Matilda, or From Little Things, Big Things Grow, or True Blue? And that would be, and the band played Waltzing Matilda. Which Spanish singer released the iconic 1960s track El Porro Pompero? Manolo Escobar, Lola Flores, Camarón de la Isla. And that Spanish singer was Manolo Escobar. What Indonesian genre combined Western rock and traditional music in the 1960s? Dangdut, Karen Kong, or Gamelan rock? Dangdut. Who is known as the First Lady of Bossa Nova during the 1960s? The First Lady of Bossa Nova in the 1960s was Elis Regina. What 1960s group brought Indian classical music influences to the Western mainstream? Was it Crosby, Stills and Nash, the Beatles, or the Byrds? And that would be the Beatles. Which Greek composer became internationally famous with the score for Zorba the Greek in 1964? Vangelis, Manos Hatzidakis, or Mikis Theodorakis? And that was Mikis Theodorakis. Which French yee artist rose to fame with Tous les garçons et les filles? France Gall, Sylvie Vartan, or François Hardy? And that artist was François Hardy. Which Indian singer became known for playback singing in Bollywood during the 1960s? Famous for playback singing in Bollywood. And that singer would be Lata Mangeshkar. What African music genre, spearheaded by artists like Franco Luambo, thrived in the 1960s? Afrobeat, Congolese rumba, or high life? And that genre is Congolese rumba. Which Peruvian artist helped popularize Andean folk music worldwide in the 1960s? Susana Baca, Ima Sumac, or Mercedes Sosa? And that was Ima Sumac. What Trinidadian music style gained popularity in the 1960s through artists like Lord Kitchener? And that Trinidadian music style? Calypso. Which avant-garde composer released the groundbreaking minimalist piece in C in 1964? Philip Glass, Steve Reich, or was it Terry Riley? And that was Terry Riley. What controversial John Cage composition was reinterpreted in Europe during the 1960s? Music of Changes, 4 foot 33 inches, or Sonatas and Interludes? I think that's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. 4:33. Which Yugoslav rock band released the influential single Kad bi bio bijelo dugme in the late 1960s? Azra, Indexi, or Bijelo dugme? I think. Bijelo dugme. Which Ethiopian musician was a key figure in the emergence of Ethio jazz during the 1960s? Mulatu Astatke, Tilhun Jesesi, or Mahmoud Ahmed? Mulatu Astatke. What was the name of the Cuban-born artist who introduced salsa into the mainstream Latin music during the 1960s? Tito Puente, Celia Cruz, or Johnny Pacheco? And that was Celia Cruz. Which Canadian artist and poet released the album songs of Leonard Cohen in 1967? And that Canadian artist and poet, that was Leonard Cohen. What was the first African band to incorporate Western electric guitar into traditional highlife music in the 1960s? Fela Kuti's Kula Lobitos, E.T. Mensah and the Tempos, or King Sunny Ade and his African Beats? It was E.T. Mensah and the Tempos. Which Japanese jazz pianist collaborated with Charles Mingus and Duke Ellington in the 1960s? Yoseki Yamashita, Toshiko Akiyoshi, or Ryuichi Takamoto? And that was Toshiko Akiyoshi. What is the name of the album released by Gaetano Veloso in 1967 that became a cornerstone of the Tropicalia movement? Domingo, Tropicalia Upani et Circenses, or Gaetano Veloso? And that would be Gaetano Veloso. Which South Korean traditional folk song saw a revival in 1968, blending modern orchestration? Jindu Arirang, Sijo Melody, or Arirang? And that would be Arirang. And now question 100. Which Finnish band introduced progressive rock with influences from local folklore in the late 1960s? Finnish band. And that would be Wigwam. Thanks for playing Quiz Time. Don't forget to drop your score in the comments, please. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss Quiz Time when it comes out. And we do like making quiz times for you. It's fun. We'll catch you next one. Bye-bye.